Welcome to Email After Hours by SenderScore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Guy Hansen.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours.
Welcome to our first episode of Email After Hours in 2025. We hope you all enjoyed some R&R over the holidays and are ready for another year of listening to Guy and I talk. And of course, our wonderful guests as well. It's a new year, and just like everybody else, we're talking about avenues for improvement. As we recover from the busiest season of the year, we are going to put the focus back where it should be on creating email campaigns and programs that subscribers love and how to do that.
Joining us today, we have Alison Gootee, Compliance and Deliverability Enablement Principal at Braze. She spent years tackling email deliverability, compliance, performance marketing, all at the highest levels, of course. And so she brings today a deep understanding of both the technical and the strategic sides of email marketing. Alison's helped countless brands manage their acquisition, build sustainable email programs, and navigate the many pitfalls of major sales events like the ones that we've just come through. Welcome to the show, Alison. It's so great to have you here today with myself and Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the intro. I feel like I'm being introduced on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So very good. I feel quite famous. It's an honor to be here. I love the podcast and I love talking about email. I'm a little bit rusty after those holidays. So I think this is a great way to kind of ring in the new year and get me blabbing about some of these things that I love to talk about. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Let's do it. And let's kick it off with a rant icebreaker. I feel like this whole episode might be a lovable rant, but Alison, with all of your experience in email marketing, I really want to know, what is the one mistake that really gets under your skin most? Like something you see brands doing over and over that just drives you batty.
So this is kind of a broader one because I thought about this a lot and I couldn't narrow it down to one thing. But in our industry, the thing that drives me the craziest is asking for feedback and not taking it. Because as Guy brilliantly stated, I do work with a lot of senders and so many of them are coming to me specifically to say, like, how can I solve this problem? Or how can I prevent this from happening again? And I'll give them the answer, which is usually simple things like get permission and prune your list when people are engaged. And they're like, okay, and what about something that's not any of those things you just said? What if I just change nothing and the mailbox providers change? And that's unlikely to happen. I do think senders are going to have to put the onus on themselves and make those changes. So if you are soliciting feedback or looking for it or hearing it, maybe you should consider taking some of that into account because the only thing you can really change is yourself. New year, new you, like, let's get it moving.
That's such a great answer. I mean, in its own right, but also because it kind of overlaps with what we're going to be talking about today. Because, I mean, if we're really honest with ourselves, I think sometimes marketers have got so much on their plate that they actually forget what it's like to be a subscriber, on the receiving end of all those emails they worked so hard to produce. And you kind of end up playing guessing games about what those customers really want. And so I feel, today's conversation that we're going to have is all about walking a mile in your customer's shoes. Or, again, to be honest, sometimes our marketers don't always take that said walk.
Yeah.
So, Alison, putting on your subscriber hat for a moment, as a receiver of emails, not a sender, what are the big things that email marketers need to remember in your mind so that the message that they're sending are seen as valuable messages, not unwanted junk mail?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I often feel the same way as it's like you'll be talking with the sender and they're like, oh, I got so many emails over the holidays. I hated it. Anyway, how did our daily sends do? And you're like, oh, it's like you're not in traffic. You are traffic. Like that, you are part of the problem there. And so the biggest thing that I harp on all the time, and I'll probably say it 5 more times during this podcast at a minimum, permission. Permission is everything. It is not just a legal technicality. I know in the UK or Canada and other places that are not the US, permission is a legal requirement. In the US, it is not. And so I think that is given, especially senders that I work with, this kind of sense of like freedom, like I'm unfettered. I can do whatever I want. It's not a legal requirement. I can say I have permission, but it doesn't matter. Like you can legally have permission. You can technically have permission. But if the person who gave you that permission did not actually say, hey, I want to get your emails and I'm asking to get them, they're not going to engage over the long term and you're going to see those deliverability problems. And so what we tend to see is senders are taking permission rather than asking for it. They're kind of like sneaking in under the wire with like a pre-check checkbox during checkout, or, hey, do you want a coupon? And P.S., we're going to email you every day. And so technically you have permission, but the people are not actually signing up because they want the email. They're doing it because they have to as part of another process. And so I think people need to reconsider whether they're taking permission or asking for it, and kind of the difference between having an email address and having permission to send to that email address. Because I think a lot of senders think, oh, I've got all these email addresses, better start sending. And it's like, did those people say they want your email, or did they merely say like, I would like to buy a product that you have, or something like that? That's a big one to me. I have a couple others. Second is that email is a two-way communication medium. It's not just an advertising outlet. And so I think a lot of senders get into this mindset of like shouting into the ether, like it's a billboard, and you can buy a billboard if that's what you want to do. Email is not that. You are kind of borrowing resources from the mailbox providers and saying, let me talk to your customers. And so if you're not following their rules and giving their customers the things that they want, you're going to be punished for that. And so you should keep that in mind. You do want to sell things, but your job in email is not just to say like, hey guys, we have stuff for sale. It's to talk about your product and how that product benefits your customers and how well you understand your customers and build up that connection so that when they are ready to buy, you are top of mind, but they're not thinking, oh my God, get this pushy brand out of my inbox, because it can be very overwhelming. And then kind of, Guy, as you said, I tell senders, like, think of everything you hate about email and don't do that stuff, because we all have complaints about it. So it's kind of like, be the change you wish to see in your inbox. You need to keep that in mind, because competitors and other brands are watching you too. They are getting your emails in their inbox and they're thinking, oh, well, if this brand sends twice a day, maybe we can try that. And we just end up with this like cavalcade of so many emails and so many wasted resources and so many upset people, senders and receivers.
Alison, you've talked about consent, right? So like, of course, we have Castle in Canada. It is much more implied that we need to have that evidence of proven consent. But let's just say we've got that, right? Guy and I have repeatedly touted the importance of email preference centers on this podcast, in our client conversations, everywhere we possibly can.
At the Christmas dinner table.
Yeah, exactly. Have a robust preference center, promote it, yada, yada, yada. And you talked about, even in the icebreaker question, just if you ask for feedback, respect it. And this is just not something I see enough of, I guess. So what's your general take on email preference centers, and how important are they really?
So I'm with you. I don't see it as often as I would like to. And I would really like to, because I, as an email recipient, there are certainly brands that I like getting their emails, but I don't need to hear from them super often. Like a clothing company, I'm going to talk about this more, but I buy a lot of fragrance items like candles and things of that nature. And I mean, you cannot burn a candle as fast as I get emails about the candles. And I think that if these senders would give me the opportunity to say, oh, I really only need to hear from you once a month, but don't leave me out, that would be so much nicer than me saying, oh my God, I really like this brand, but I'm going to have to sever ties with them completely, because there is no other option between like this inundation of daily or twice daily emails versus like a nice general cadence where I can kind of keep them in mind. So I think preference centers are totally underrated, undervalued, underutilized. I think in addition to a preference center in the email, senders should start asking for preferences at sign up. And even again in the welcome email, which obviously could double as your double opt-in confirmation email, which I think everyone should use too. And so I think if we could kind of do a better job as senders setting expectations and meeting those expectations, and also letting people edit those expectations later, the things that they want to hear from you. Because when I'm in shopping mode in the holidays, like I don't mind hearing from you every day if you're doing different sales every day, or if I have new people to shop for. But January, February, I probably don't need all those daily emails. And so if you could give me the opportunity to say I want to receive them less, I think that would be so helpful. I also think it's a great thing to add in the days of the one-click unsubscribe, where people are looking for like ways to hang on to more of their subscriber base. We do need to let them unsubscribe. You could say like, hey, do you want to hear from us less? Or do you want to hear different types of messages from us? But I think senders should get very creative and granular about the types of things that they're offering recipients control over, because as you guys alluded to earlier, like senders spend a lot of time doing guessing. And I feel like it's such a waste of time. You don't have to guess. You have them right here and they can give you feedback. And even a lack of feedback is still feedback. If people are not interested in answering your survey, like that's interesting too. How can you get subscribers who are more interested in talking to you? Or how can you get this feedback from another way? Or what kind of factors do you have that can kind of influence things that you're doing? So anyway, I do think it's wise to offer recipients that control over their own experience, even if they don't take you up on that offer, because any information is still valuable.
Listen, I mean, here we are. We're still fresh off the 2024 peak sales season. Just like previous years, inboxes were completely inundated with promotions. We've been talking about it, and at the moment we're in that little sort of post-peak trough, but it's going to start ramping up again soon for Blue Monday and Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and Easter and all those other big events on the calendar. So, Alison, do you think that email marketers should actually be able to recognize when they're hitting a point of oversaturation? And if they do, what should they do about it? I think, is it as simple as subscribing to their own email programs so they can drown alongside their own subscribers?
I don't want them to go down with their ship like the Titanic. I want them to stay on board and fight. But I do, and I recommend that. That's definitely something that I do all the time in my own troubleshooting, is signing up for people's emails, because I just made a purchase the other day from a local bakery for some cinnamon roll home delivery, and they were delightful. I wish you guys were here because I got 2 left. And so when they emailed me my confirmation, I was so excited. And then later they emailed me and said, we're having a Halloween special, order your Halloween treats. And I was like, oh, I think we're a little bit late. I think you learned that your ESP had an automation feature and you set this thing up and we're like past that. And so I emailed them and said, hey, I think you need to check this out. But it's just like a very small mom and pop shop. And so I'm sure they didn't know that much. But just little things like that, where as a new subscriber, maybe getting an experience that you totally forgot about or didn't know was happening or was a mistake or an accident. And again, this isn't judgment. People make mistakes all the time. You're using features of your ESP you may not be familiar with. And so I definitely think senders should do that. I know it can be tough when they do have so many competing emails and flows and things going on. So maybe they could create like a seed testing account, a brand new one that's just for new subscriber at our brand, trying to figure out what that looks like. I really enjoy that tactic. I think it's great. I hate the phrase eat your own dog food, but I think it's very much that sort of a thing where it's like, hey, you're sending this out. Let's see what that experience looks like. How would you feel? Because we are not our own best judges. It's easy to like flatter yourself and think our emails are amazing. Everyone would love to get them even 5 times a day, but that's probably not true. You can maybe even enlist the help of a friend at a different company or a partner or someone and say like, would you mind signing up for these and letting me know how annoying it is? Because I just don't have the ability to like view it through a lens where I'm not already biased. I think in addition to receiving your own emails, just always keep that subscriber fatigue in mind when reviewing your sending results all year long, because when we're talking about things like decreased engagement or increase in unsubscribes or spam complaints, that's one of the things I talk about is like, let's go through this user's history and see, have they been receiving too many emails? Like maybe they signed up with one email address and then made a purchase and they got entered into 2 flows and are now getting twice the emails as expected. Maybe we're just sending too aggressively for them. One thing that happens that bothers me so much, another rant incoming, when you buy something and then they immediately put you on their marketing list. And so like I bought some send it home items and they haven't arrived yet. And they're sending me emails every day. You've got 10% off. You've got 15% off. And I'm like, I don't even know if I like your stuff yet. So why would I give you more of my money? Could you give it a couple weeks and then send that follow-up like, hey, did you like our products and do you want to buy more? But when they start emailing you right off the bat before you've even had a chance to get familiar with their product, it just feels like such a crash grab. Like, I'm not at your ATM. I am a person with needs, and you're not thinking about how your product fits into my life very well at all. So anyway, I think if your ESP offers an unsubscribe survey when people opt out and it says, are you receiving too much mail or what's the reason you unsubscribed? I think that can be very helpful.
Definitely. And just building on that, kind of like a related question, would you advocate for something like, I'll say this in inverted commas, a sort of post-Black Friday email detox? I think Danielle and I, huge fans of snooze functionality or the ability to sort of temporarily opt down. Surely it makes sense. Give your customers the opportunity to hit pause if you haven't got anything new to offer them for a little while. What do you think?
Yeah, I love that. I definitely recommend it, especially there's been a lot of chatter about things like Mother's Day. Do you want to get Mother's Day emails? And everyone first, it's so sensitive of you to ask if I want Mother's Day emails. Then there's kind of in this backlash where it's like, Mother's Day does make me sad. So stop asking me about how I feel about Mother's Day. And so I definitely think back to the preference center thing, like taking a pause, letting people say, these are the things I want to hear about. Maybe I never want any kind of holiday messages. Maybe I just want to hear your regular stuff. I think that's a very good thing. I think it can be very beneficial for senders to allow users to pause, whether that's for specific holidays or for a time span of some kind. Maybe I'm on a spending freeze January through March as like my Q1 goals for myself, but I do still want to hear from you later.
I love the idea too of like, just to your point, Alison, about asking too much, like the Mother's Day example, right?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I've had clients who sent that a couple of years ago. They got excellent feedback, like social feedback about that. And they just never asked again for some of these people. But I love the idea of like a new year, new you. You send the preference center update as your like refresher for New Year. I just love that idea. But just because I love this rant, I do want to ask, Alison, for you during the holidays, how many emails did you get from a single brand on a single day? Mine, I counted, mine was 6 from a single brand on a single day.
That's, first of all, that's so many. Second of all,
many. So many.
Well, I feel bad because I wasn't keeping track, but I went on a bit of a like brutal unsubscribing spree. I was like, I'm running a tight ship this holiday season. So I think I maxed out at like 2 or 3 per brand. And then I was like, you're done. I'm not doing this anymore because I went a little bit overboard shopping for other people for a change, not just myself this year. And it was like, okay, I bought cheese for my brother-in-law. How much more cheese do I need to buy for him? Probably none. You don't need to send me 2 and 3 emails a day. It turns out his birthday was also at Christmas, so I should have bought him double the cheese. But that's a mistake I will
always
modify
double the cheese.
for
always.
Next year. So yeah, I maxed out at like 2 or 3 per brand. I went on a bit of an unsubscribing spree, but I do think like that repetition is an engagement killer. If I need it, I'll let you know. But I think senders should be very cautious when they're doing things like sending 6 times a day, because people like you and me have looked at all 6 of them. And so I'm not seeing anything unless it's like we're running 6 different specials throughout the day. So be sure you open all 6. If it's just the same thing over and over because they want to like stay at the top of the inbox, I think that's crazy talk. And I don't think people should do that.
I think we actually talked about this guy with Seth on our episode right before we took a break for the holidays. But it was like, there's this other thing that factors in too, where it's, if every single email is the last chance, like it starts to be, no, it's
I
not.
don't believe you. Yeah,
I know I'm going to get this email from you in like 3 hours or whatever. And I was trying to do an experiment over the holidays where I just let it, because I have, like most of us do, probably like 20 email addresses that are just sitting around like for testing. And so for some of them, I was like, I am not going to engage with anything like for the week. Like I'm just going to let it go and see who takes the hint and like who doesn't. And then I realized in my mind, like, if they're basing this on opens, it's probably going to look like I opened everything. So I guess the question came to me, which was, how should brands be treating subscribers who didn't engage with anything during the holidays? Should we be quiet with them now? Should they be suppressing them? Like, what do we do with people who took no action on, let's say, no less than 30 emails?
Yeah. So I think that's a good question. I'm going to give you kind of the crappy deliverability answer, which is it depends. Because I think that the strategy varies based on the subscriber and the brand. Are these new subscribers? Are they legacy list members? Does your product have like a relevant usage throughout the year? Is it seasonal? If you're selling Christmas lights and no one engaged for 30 emails during Christmas, like probably you don't need to keep emailing them in January and February. Maybe they're still going to be good next December. Like, are they people who have previously purchased? Are they just lurkers? Did they go through double opt-in? I work with a lot of customers who are like very averse to the double opt-in concept. And so when they start talking about unengaged users, I'm like, okay, how unengaged? Like they never confirmed opt-in and they never opened. What makes you think they're going to suddenly start purchasing? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. Have you already attempted to re-engage these people and what happened when you did? And so there's, on the one hand, deliverability is so quick and easy. Just send wanted email to people who want it. On the other, each of these things has so many nuances because these people who don't want it, why don't they want it? And what have you done to either confirm previously that they did used to want it and now don't, or have just never been engaged at all? And so I guess 1, it depends. 2, think about those things and what your long-term goals are. Because if Danielle, if you were previously engaged, but then didn't open during the holidays, I might want to make sure you're still okay. Like, hey, are you still out there? Do you want to still hear from us? And if I continue not to hear from you from like a reconfirmation attempt of some kind, or even like a very extra special discount, like Danielle, you didn't buy Christmas lights when they were on sale 30 times, but in January they're on like extra super sale. Do you want to try it now? And you still don't buy it. I think it's time to cut them loose. Maybe you can try to wake them back up next holiday season. But I would only really do that if they had double opted in. I'm kind of like, I forget the phrase for it, but I'm like, no holds barred. Like, get rid of them. If people are not engaging, just get rid of them, because they can always come back. You can advertise to them on another channel. I don't know about you guys, but I'm seeing the same ads like Instagram. I'm an old person who still uses Facebook. They're on my games that I play. The ads come up. And so email is not the only way you can reach these people. It's just a really good one to be able to.
We get that companies need to make money, and especially during sort of peak periods like the one we just come through, marketers are going to send sales-focused emails, and presumably it's because that's what their subscribers want to receive during those big sale periods. But do you think there's other types of content or strategy that those senders could also be using to perhaps engage their customers in a slightly more meaningful way?
Yes, so much. I think educational content is way, 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 way underutilized. Educational obviously doesn't have to mean like in an academic sense, but I think most products or services receive tons of questions about those products or services. They have customer service inboxes. They could probably make a list of like the top 25 questions and use those to build content. And what do people ask before or after buying that you can go ahead and clear up now? Why do customers return to you? How can you showcase your features and benefits via email? Do you have a customer loyalty program? Do you offer referrals? Are there notable dates customers should be aware of? Like we talked about with holidays, like, are you going to run a really good holiday special? Or does your brand have an anniversary that you always really splash out for that you can let us know about? What about partner offerings? Like, whose product complement your own? Do you have any partner deals that might make me enjoy your product more? Like I said, I'm into candles. Do you work with like a lighter company or a wick trimmer or something like that, where I can kind of have a whole suite of items? I think just going back to this, email is a communication channel and not a billboard. And so how can you as a sender leverage that to kind of demonstrate your commitment to your customers, current and future? Maybe I'm on your list and I haven't purchased yet, but that doesn't mean I'm never going to. Like, what is the thing that gets customers over the edge from those lurkers to full-fledged paying members of your customer database? And so I think kind of spelling out what those things are, the benefits, or how interesting they are, or why people return, can be really helpful in a way that isn't just directly like click here and buy more, but kind of like, hey, just think about us. We're here when you want us later.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think senders that can nail that, there's going to be a dividend for them, isn't there? Because, yeah, subscribers purchase from brands they trust, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that kind of gets lost. I talk a lot about email, a little bit about marketing. I'm not a marketer, but I am a consumer. And so I think from the consumer standpoint, those are definitely the brands that I want to shop with, are the ones who seem like they understand me as their customer and what my needs are and why I'm shopping with them. And just that transparency. Again, you don't have to guess, and I don't want to guess. I think we should both be open with each other. Like, here's what you can expect from me, and here's what I can expect from you, and keep that line of communication going instead of them just like shouting at me that I should buy their things.
We've already covered so many great talking points about how senders can be a little more subscriber centric in their marketing. But if you had to pull all of those strands together, how would you describe what a great email experience looks like for you as a subscriber?
Oh, okay. So I thought about this a lot. And so I think, of course, it starts with the opt-in process. I think the opt-in process should be very transparent, truly optional. And I think I get it. People are trying to collect as many addresses as possible and as like low a barrier a way that works for them. I am all about more barriers. I think it should be more friction in the opt-in process. I like to say that breaks are friction and they keep you from crashing. And so I think more friction during sign up is necessary, because a lot of times, like we talked about, permission is kind of treated as this like technical thing. Technically the checkbox was checked. And so we have permission. And that's just not accurate to me. I think people should have to like take explicit direct action to say, I want to hear this from you. I am choosing to do it. And so I think, one, they should ask for permission. 2, if you're asking for an email address, don't immediately ask me for my phone number, 2, as a requirement to get the thing that you just promised me.
Hate that.
I can't stand it when they say, we're going to give you 20% off for joining our email list. And then they're like, SMS too, or else you don't get it. That's not what you said. You said email list. I would have never even given you my address if I knew the phone number was going to also be required. Oh, that bugs me so much. Anyway, post asking for permission. Always confirm that permission. Do the double opt-in. I don't know any subscriber. Maybe you guys can vouch for me on this, but I don't know any subscriber that has been like, oh, a confirmation email. I'm not going to confirm that. Gross. I think people are like, oh, that's the thing I just signed up for. Perfect. Like, yes, this is me. And yes, I meant to do that. I'm not sure why. Not sure why there's such a reluctance to not send to people who do not confirm they want to your friend.
I'm too biased at this point because anytime I see one of those confirmation emails after I sign up for something, I'm like, oh, you angel, you wonderful brand. Thank you for doing this. I'm going to go buy something
right now.
I was going to say, given that we're all sort of deliverability at heart, let's have a deliverability specific question as well. So we know that when you've had a big sales period like the one we've just been through, deliverability often takes a hit, not just during the period itself, but often there's a bit of an aftermath there as well. Yeah. So do you have any quick wins for email marketers after a big sales season like the one we've just been through? It's a good opportunity to assess the health of your email program and maybe sort of think about your list quality and your sender reputation and how to put them back on an even keel.
So no, I don't think there's any quick wins. I do think the quickest win in deliverability is typically just reducing volume, sending to only your cream of the crop, best subscribers. You could try bribing someone at Google. I don't know that would work. But in my experience, recovery from a misstep just takes time and commitment. And so on the one hand, it's a bummer that I can't say like, do this one crazy thing and fix your, you could stop sending. That'll fix your reputation very slowly, but then you'll have to start over and rebuild it. But I just think, again, the good news about email is that it keeps going. It's not ending tomorrow. You still have your list. You can still send to people. You can still do other things. And so I think if you are struggling, now's the time to like reset and think about what you want to do. Start from scratch, send to those best subscribers, build up your content, and plan ahead for a next holiday season so that you don't have a redo of what happened this year. Like, take a very close look at those results. What did go wrong? Were you sending Danielle 6 emails a day and she was like super sick of it, even though you thought she was opening every single one of them?
It's exactly what we see, though, because especially after Google and Yahoo's 2024 requirements were enforced, I got a lot of questions that were like, I'm meeting the 3 requirements. Why are my emails still going to spam? It doesn't make any sense. And it's this common misconception that deliverability issues are purely just
I checked all the
setting
boxes.
Or a tick box. Exactly.
We are having such fun with this conversation, and it almost feels like a shame to bring it to an end, but
never
we have
stop.
to, I'm afraid. But we do have one final quick question for you, Alison. So here we are. It's January. Do you have an email marketing resolution for 2025?
This is such a cop-out one, but it's valid and it's true. And it means I get to check it off the list for the whole year and I've accomplished all my goals. I'm totally set. It was get on this podcast. Done and dusted. I have accomplished that. January 7th, check it off the list. I'm good to go. This was amazing. I have had such a good time. My resolution really is to just continue to help senders. I love email. I love talking about email. I love when it clicks for senders, when they finally are like, oh, I get it. I was lucky enough to be able to present at our own company conference in September. I just did a very basic, like, deliverability kind of 101 here, my 5 foundational pillars. And one guy, after the presentation was over, got up and he said, do you mean to tell me that the way people respond to my emails affects inbox placement for other people? And I was like, yes. And so that, on the one hand, I was like, oh my God, this dude's been sending emails like 20 years and didn't know this. But on the other hand, I was like, oh, he got it. Then it felt so good. So anyway, if being on this podcast helps facilitate that for anyone who's listening, that would be amazing. But coming on here was such a great opportunity. I appreciate it so much. I had such a good time. I have learned so much from you too. And I can't wait to hear more episodes in the future. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
And we've got to have you back. And also, I aspire to your level of resolution execution if we're on the 7th and that's been done. But Alison, thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights and your expertise with us today. For listeners that are interested in connecting with you or learning more about your work, what's the best way for them to reach out?
please follow me on LinkedIn. I post a meme pretty much every Wednesday, a meme that is deliverability related, inspired by recent events. And I post kind of a blurb ruining the joke, but explaining why it's funny to me and how it's relevant to senders or what I have experienced. It's become very helpful because especially on Email Geeks, like we talked about, or customer tickets that come in, I've had this whole repository of memes now with explanations where I can say, oh, you said you hit a spam trap. Here's a little cartoon about that for you. So anyway, Alison Gootee on LinkedIn. Would love to meet you and be connected. If you are a sender who needs help, I'm always happy to answer questions. As you might have guessed, I could go on far too long. So keep it in email because then you can tell me to shut up whenever you want. Stop reading. Anyway, yes.
And just one final word. Danielle and I are always super proud of our great guests who join us on Email After Hours. And we're always looking for new ones to join us for future episodes. If you, as one of our listeners today, want to join us for an upcoming episode, drop us a comment, ping us on LinkedIn. You can fill out the guest form, link to the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, everybody.
Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours, and see you next time.